Emulating consoles has always been an issue. It describes the process of imitating the structure of a piece of hardware using software, so it can run a game as if it was played on the real thing. At least that's the theory behind it. But achieving this goal is way harder than it sounds. Especially considering how many games were designed back then, the emulator has to make sure to only run at the cycles per second that the original hardware could handle. Obviously, there's much more to it than this, but that's not our topic today. Emulating has been a very controversial matter in pretty much every regard. This goes from the regular player to speedrunners and even the people who are making tool-assisted speedruns. Just checking the web, you can find an insane amount of emulators of all sorts, and it's hard to figure out which one fits your needs the best. If you just want to re-experience a game, any emulator would be fine. Well, except for PlayStation, cause that one was a mess to deal with. So let's not mention PlayStation anymore, because of, the mess that's called the PlayStation Classic. What did Sony even think when they created this? Anyways, as soon as it comes to speedrunning, a lot more important factors come around the corner. Even though Nintendo had the original code and probably the testing units for the Nintendo 64, their emulator Wii Virtual Console and the ones that followed still had major flaws. So let's talk about these flaws, their benefits for speedrunning, and a little bit about their design. Wii Virtual Console was built from the ground up by Nintendo. Their engineers used the language C++ in an attempt to reinterpret the games they were designed for. Depending on the game you want to play, the emulator needed slight adjustments to make sure the game feels as close to the original as possible. This is one of the biggest differences to the emulators you can run on your PC. However, it still comes with a few flaws that are still there thanks to a lack of time. Let's take our precious Ocarina of Time as an example. Because the emulator was built from the ground up, the developers had to deal with the memory management of the game.
However, at one point in the development, they had to deal with their memory overflowing and leading to the game crashing. Even though this is mostly fixed, it can still happen every now and then. The developer of the emulator called this sad life, as they had no time to completely solve this issue. But the flaws go a little further than this. When Nintendo designed the emulator, they mostly focused on the casual experience of the game, so it had to run smoothly, the controls should feel as close to the original as possible, and all textures, models, and assets should be displayed without any problems. Due to this, they had no time to focus on limiting the memory of the system itself, just as emulators do that are focused on emulating a wide variety of games. This leads to the games being able to use way more memory than the original consoles had, and this is where the speedrunning tricks come in. Due to this little oversight, Ocarina of Time on the Wii Virtual Console opens the door to tricks such as using the DQ stick as Adult Link, using big gore and eye drops on your B button, using explosives out of bounds, and even going as far as manipulating items you were supposed to get, turning DQ nuts into light arrows for example. Doing either of these glitches crashes on any original console. These include the Nintendo 64 on any version, and the Chinese IQ. If any of these tricks are attempted on an emulator that tries to get as close to the original hardware as possible, the memory of the GPU will run out of bounds and overwrite an instruction that is crucial for the game to run. While there would be equally big problems with Virtual Console, the emulator just doesn't show what it can't render. This might seem like an easy way out to prevent crashes, but chances are that these issues happened every now and then, and in order to prevent even more random crashes, they just allowed for them to slip by. But it doesn't end here. Things like these can be observed in pretty much any game that is being emulated, especially on Wii Virtual Console. While it is an original release and attempts to feel as original as possible, there are a few very unfortunate oversights. Just to mention another example, did you know that the platforms in the level Bowser in the Fire Sea in Super Mario 64 rise over time? If you keep the game running for a couple of days while being in the level, they'll suddenly start floating in the air. This is only an issue with the emulator used by Nintendo, but would never interfere with the experience a normal player has while going through the level. But this once again proves how hard it is to emulate consoles, even if you have access to their dev kits from about 20 years ago. Looking at these tricks probably makes one wonder, are these allowed in speedruns? And the answer is yes, they are. The reasoning behind this is the fact that the games were developed and released by Nintendo alongside with the emulator. Obviously, there are people that reject the use of these emulators, as they are just running a piece of software that tries to mimic the hardware, while it really isn't. Flawless emulation doesn't exist, however, and playing on older consoles, such as the N64, comes with a couple of downsides, such as having to deal with the wear of the N64 control stick. However, Virtual Console doesn't only have upsides for speedrunning. Let's use Majora's Mask for example.
In the Japanese version of Majora's Mask, you had to stop the postman's timer at 10.00 seconds, rather than 10.0 seconds, as it was in the American and the European release. The timer the game uses here is based on the clock speed the N64 CPU runs at. The game will count a certain amount of CPU cycles of the console it's running on in order to determine whether the player really hit 10.00 or not. However, due to the difference in speed between the N64 and Wii, this can turn out to be a problem. The emulator on the Wii will attempt to reduce the CPU cycles to a similar number the N64 has. However, in order to make the game run smoothly, it cheats a little bit and evens out frame times. This is applied on the software, and suddenly, it accidentally skipped the exact number the game wanted for this minigame to be beatable. The timer will just jump from 9.99 seconds to 10.01 seconds, making it impossible to even get the heart piece. Luckily enough, this doesn't happen too often. Only around 60% of the time this game is attempted on the Japanese Wii Virtual Console. So as you can see, emulation doesn't always come with benefits. As with pretty much everything, there are some ups and downs. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed. If you want to watch more videos, be sure to click the annotations on the screen right now. And be sure to subscribe and click the bell button, because then you won't miss anything. And we're making 2 videos a week now. Epic, right?